parcel H-PO-038. Mr. Pattee, there we go. Sorry, the first witness is virtual, so we will.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I sure can. Hey, technology is great when it works. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. John, can you pronounce your last name for me?
Pattee.
Pattee.
Pattee, yes.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to provide is true and accurate?
Yes, sir.
Please state and spell your name and provide your address for the record.
John Pattee, John Pattee. My address is 1966 298th Street, Calamus, Iowa.
Thank you. And can you see that KMZ file up on the screen now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. All right. Now I think we're going to mix it up a little bit today, and I think Board Member Burns is going to lead the questions for you. So I'm going to turn it over to Board Member Burns.
Okay.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Pattee, you said?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning.
So, for you, first thing, just based on that KMZ file, some of the other landowners have had different names, and that's pretty typical. North 40, back 80, whatever. Would you have a different name that you reference this piece of property as?
No.
Okay. So as we talk about this parcel, just keep in mind that we have a court reporter here, and she is taking our words and putting it into the record. And so when we go back to review that record, as detailed as you can be, north side, west side, east side, whatever it may be, just for the record purposes. So can you describe the current use of your property and any plans that you would have for a different future use?
Current use is typical Potawatomi County farmer. We farm the ground to raise corn, soybeans, sometimes forage, and we farm to try to make a profit. Always have, will continue to do so.
And no different future uses for it?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. How about, can you provide a different or a general description of your property? And if there's anything on your property that you would like to highlight, something that's unique, please do so at this time.
This is rolling hills, typical of Potawatomi County. We're going to be from the road on the south side all the way to the property to the north. We're gonna go through multiple terraces. We're gonna go through some water tile lines buried in the ground. And at the north side, as you can see, we'll be crossing a ditch that, other than drought years, is carrying water down that creek. So yes, that's the area. So from south to north, nothing really unusual to a typical farm ground.
All right. Buildings or structures, nothing of that nature on the property?
Not in these three parcels.
Okay.
I will point out that there's a well, a water well that's right here on this property, and it's available to use. that would be the only, other than terraces and tile and the creek, we have a water well that's right there. There's up here to the north, to the east, can't quite see it, is a farm buildings with a house, and my son and his wife and 3 children are there. Yep, right about there. That's the only other buildings on this entire property, is right up here.
And
This is on high ground. This obviously is on low ground.
if we can just go back a second, you said there's a well, and I have staff here that have the hand that they can move around. Can you see that hand moving on the screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay. And you said there's a well on the property where?
Apparently you probably can't see my cursor. It's okay from your hand. It's to your right and above just a little bit. Keep going, keep about there, about right there. Yeah. Yep, there it is.
Gotcha. Thank you. And then you said your son lives on. I didn't quite catch that.
Yes, to the east, right there.
Gotcha. Perfect. Thank you. I think you mentioned drainage tile.
Yes.
These parcels have drainage tile, and if so, is it a pattern tile? Where's the tile approximately located?
Okay, and pardon me, but can you see my cursor?
No, we cannot.
Okay. In the south parcel, there are some water tiles between the second and third terrace to the north, I guess would be, and is tile underneath that north terrace in that parcel. This is not pattern tile. It's hard to pattern tile hilly ground like this. Then in the next parcel to the north, there is tile approximately to the middle of that parcel, going down to that creek, and one lower than where you're at, south. Yep, south more. Yep, right in there. There's another one going to the creek. And then on the east parcel, the third parcel, there are 2 tile lines. One approximately from the bottom terrace on the south side of that parcel to the creek, and then one halfway up to the north side of that terrace, going obviously dumping in that creek as well. So there's a few, and those shouldn't, if that line you're going to put in, those shouldn't come into play, but there are some there.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any other underground installations, water lines, like a county water system, natural gas lines, telecommunications, anything else that you're aware of other than that well and the tile?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. Any above ground facilities? It looks like there might be some overhead electrical lines on the south side, maybe, or not?
No.
Okay. I think you kind of highlighted this, but streams of water, ponds, timber, forest, anything that's other noteworthy features of the terrain?
Not in those 3 parcels, no.
Okay. And then are there any easements that are held by a third party on any of these 3 parcels?
No.
Okay. Any other features, conditions might not be readily apparent by looking at the KMZ map, but something you'd like to point out? All right.
No, I think we've covered them.
All right. And then describe specific concerns you may have and any recommendations you have for the board to address those concerns concerning this project.
Well, I have a little speech made up, a few statements that I can read at some point in time. But concerning the project, my biggest concern is I have not given landowner consent, and I know eminent domain is over our heads. My secondary concern is the ground itself. That, and I realize that you probably have experts telling you that it'll go back to mint condition over a period of time. I would dispute that heartily. I mean, it can do as nice a job as you can do. That's my point, is that it will never be back to the way it was. Affecting yields, affecting profitability, affecting what the purpose of is, why we are farming in the first place.
So fair to say your primary concern is the restoration of that land and having the soils disturbed?
Yes.
Did you recommend any sort of alternative routes for the proposed line? And if so, what was the proposed alternative?
I did not. I wasn't aware that I could recommend an alternative route. My recommendation for an alternative route would be simple: to not go through our land. That would be my recommendation of an alternative route. Now, if it had to, and the powers that be forced me to have it through my land, I guess I would recommend clear against the west fence, the west side of the property, so possible future ruptures, future construction, future anything would remain there and not right down to the middle of the property, destroying crops and destroying the ground. But my first choice, yeah, not on my ground.
Sure. So, just going to ask you, so in my mind, I have this vision of negotiations as, two parties sitting down at a table and having a conversation. Have you had like a sit-down conversation and negotiated the terms of the voluntary easement?
No. Not a sit-down conversation. I've had conversations with the representative via telephone, via emails, but we've not had a sit-down face-to-face conversation, no.
Did you receive an offer?
Yes. 2 of them, I think, in the last 2 years.
And did you make any sort of counter offer?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. And I believe that is all the questions that I have for you, Mr. Pattee. Thank you for your time. And I'll turn it back to Chair Helen.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from the parties? Ms. Gruenhagen, Farm Bureau.
Morning, Mr. Pattee. My name is Chris Gruenhagen. I'm representing the Iowa Farm Bureau Federation in these proceedings. And so I have a few questions here for you. First, just to make sure we have a clean record, our daily digest showed that you were here about 2 parcels, which are the 2 northern ones. You also own that 3rd parcel on the south side, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And so that is PO-024 for identifying the record. What is your relationship with, or do you have any contracts with the Pottawatomie County Soil and Water Conservation District?
Yes, we are to comply with conservation standards that the FSA and the Soil and Water Conservation District tell us help us decide what to do, yes.
Do you have any contracts with them?
I'm not sure. I did. I don't know if those have expired, if they're still in play. I'm sorry, I can't 100% answer that question.
Would they have given you any cost share for your properties?
Not on these parcels.
Did you receive copies of the Exhibit H, the eminent domain request?
Yes.
Did you have a chance to look at those?
Yes.
Two of them list the Pottawatomie County Soil and Water Conservation District as a tenant, and one of them lists them as an easement holder. So that's why I was trying to figure out what your relationship was with them.
Again, I apologize. I would have to go back and look at the records. Most farmers have a conservation plan that they need to abide by, which means most of the time conservation tillage, where you can plow or not plow, or no-till or not no-till, those type of things. The terraces, the construction of the terraces is always has to pass also before any terraces are started and completed or fixed or repaired. So,
Then why is following your conservation plan important?
it's important to our habitat. It's important to the future of the ground, to keep the ground in place, to keep it fertile, to keep it productive, so it doesn't wash down the hills.
Is it also required to participate in federal farm programs?
Yes.
And so have you enrolled in federal farm programs with these parcels?
As in federal crop insurance?
Yes. Or any
Yes.
other farm program?
Yes.
Are there any other farm programs that you've enrolled in?
No.
Any CRP?
Not on these parcels.
Do you also own the parcels that are to the east between these parcels and your son's farmstead?
Yes.
And so all of the drainage in this area goes to that creek that goes through the kind of the middle part of the northeast parcel?
That's correct. As a general rule, the west side of the property, the south side of the property, and the east side of the property are all higher than the middle of the property. So basically, yes, everything flows downhill to the center of the property.
Can you estimate the elevation difference between the top of the hill and the bottom? Is it a pretty, from the KMZ, it looks pretty significant, but can you kind of describe it for us since?
Well, that's the purpose of all the terraces on the ground, is to hold the soil and water, keep the conservation plans up. The elevation drop, I don't know, I wouldn't be good at that. I would certainly think from where the buildings sit on the east to the creek bottom, gosh, I would say at least 100 feet, and probably the same on the south and the west. But that's simply a guess.
With the terraces, the proposed pipeline route looks like it crosses at least 3 terraces, maybe 4. Is that your calculations?
That's my guess as well.
So is it important that those get restored so that you can maintain compliance with your conservation plan?
Yes, definitely.
And then the tile system that you have in place that helps the terraces work properly as well?
Correct.
And so it's important that those tiles remain operational too.
Correct.
So if those, either the terraces weren't reconstructed properly or the tiles weren't working, into the future because of the construction in that easement, would you expect Summit to make sure that those get fixed?
Yes,
And I don't believe I asked this. This is highly erodible land, correct?
yes,
I think you talked about soil erosion, but I'm not sure you used that term. So.
correct.
The pipeline route there crosses some of your tillable fields. Is it important that when Summit is not in active construction that you be able to access and go across that easement to access the other part of your field?
Yes,
Is it important during construction that you be able to access the back part of your field? Say if the construction starts occurring or would occur in April or May.
the back part, as in the west and north?
Yes.
Same as
Yes.
yes, we definitely need to access all the corners of the farm.
Do you know what size pipe Summit is proposing for this area?
No,
And you mentioned you have a concern about crop yield reductions.
yes,
If construction occurred in such a manner that you have persistent crop yield reductions going beyond the 3-year schedule, would you want Summit to continue to pay any yield reductions that occurred in that easement area?
yes. However, I'd like to not even have to worry about that and the sustainability of this, of what yields, the APH yields are, and if these are not up to standards, by simply not having it go across our property and not having to mess with that. But I guess if we're still having yield reduction in after 3 years, I would think it would be appropriate for someone to pay the difference or more.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you. And I'm not sure if I got the order correctly, but I've got you both down here. Ms. Coles?
Good morning, Mr. Pattee. I'm
Good morning.
Jean Colas with Colas Family Farms. I'm kind of in the same pickle that you are. And I have a few questions. Approximately how many feet of tile will be affected by this pipeline construction?
Oh, gosh. You mean the entire length of the tile or just?
The tile that will be impacted when it's crossed or unusable if there's a break.
Oh, I would, and again, ballparking it, I would probably go with a couple thousand feet.
Okay, so about 2,000 feet then. Okay.
Sure.
Now you said that you expected Summit to repair this pipeline if they damage it. Is that correct?
I expected them to repair the terraces and the drainage, yes. As they did put the construction back together again.
Do you think this is feasible? If it's damaged, that they could fix it within a very quick period of time? Since tiling is basically a seasonal operation.
Well, I guess that would depend on how they go about fixing it. If they're going to just fix the, whatever it is, the 100 feet where they're digging or whatever that number of feet is from the width of the pipeline, Are they just going to replace that, or are they going to replace it clear to the outlet, you know, because that would make a substantial difference, because there will be crops planted going to the outlet where these tile lines are outletted to. However, if they just fix where it's at, it won't affect the other crop as much. But I don't know how they're going to do that, and I don't know if it's fixable just in the construction area, or if they will have to extend it out to the outlets. So I really can't answer that question, but there will certainly be crops, if they go outside of the construction area, that they will be damaging.
So in other words, you think it would need to go to the outlet to be fixed properly so it will function as it did before the construction?
I'm not an engineer to answer that, but I would feel better about it if it was, the tile was newly constructed to the outlet site.
You also mentioned that your son's family lives close to the pipeline. Approximately how close to the pipeline do they live?
You know, I wish I'd have measured that out, but I didn't. I'm going to guess it's approximately 1,800 to 2,000 feet from proposed pipeline to where their house is right now.
I think the board has the capability of measuring this on the map. Can they do that for me, please?
Well, this is certainly going to show how good of a guesser I am,
Yep.
or not.
Mr. Pattee, can you see them moving that box around?
Yes,
And where's the house?
go a little bit to the left. That would be really close.
So that's reading 2,229 feet. Is that, you were close?
Very good. Are you aware of the problem a rupture might cause to your family living there and to your land?
Yes, I'm aware that that's certainly a possibility.
You mentioned that you had 2 easement agreements with Summit. Why did you not want to sign those agreements? What was lacking?
I will say the representative doing his job well. As I told him that it's not the messenger, it's the message. I'm not interested in a price. I'm interested in not having a pipeline go through my ground. So I told him it would be a waste of his time and my time to continue negotiating the price. I'm not interested in a price. I'm interested in no pipeline.
Were you concerned about the longevity of the easement agreement and what it gave Summit?
Yes.
And what was the longevity of that easement agreement?
I don't recall. I know the payments were scheduled out for, I believe, 3 years, but I don't know the longevity of how long they can go in and make repairs and fix ruptures and I guess forever go across our ground and fix things as they need fixed.
Were you aware that 3 years was basically under construction only, and that the easement agreement was in perpetuity, that they always have that land? You can never get it back, even if the pipeline permit is not given to Summit for a Seacoast Station site in North Dakota?
Objection. Okay. State your objection.
Sorry, I haven't had enough coffee yet this morning.
That's all right.
I just need to object to the fact that is a misstatement of law. Chapter 479B has a very robust and clear abandonment clause that if the pipeline is not in operation for a 5-year period, that the landowner can trigger a reversion of the rights back. So to say that there is no way the landowner can ever get that back for all of perpetuity is just legally incorrect. I just want to clarify the record on that.
Thank you. Ms.
And
Solis, do you have a response?
I have a question. Wasn't that only under construction?
Go ahead.
Obviously, I am not Ms. Cole's lawyer, but certainly we read that to be that there are different provisions in that abandonment chapter for if it doesn't get built in a certain amount of time, but also at any future time once it's been in operation. If the line ceases to be in operation for 5 years, it can be considered abandoned, and that triggers the abandonment and the reversion statute.
Ms. Close, did you have a response to that? Or?
My easement agreement didn't state that.
Okay. Thank you for the objection. Mr. Dubinsky, the objection is sustained. So let's go ahead and move into the next question, please. Or make your point in a different manner.
Sorry, I'm not a lawyer. And, well, I
You're
guess
doing fine. Go ahead.
I guess that's it. I understand that you are totally against that and you have excellent reasons. So thank you very much, Mr. Pattee, for answering my questions. No further comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Colas, and apologies for misstating your name. Ms. Stuck, I believe you're next.
Thank you. Good morning. I am Lisa Stuck from Wright County, and my husband and I are landowners. I guess I wanted to go back and touch on this, on the subject of the safety of the pipeline and when there is a rupture. What is your closest emergency personnel that would be at your farm when that happens, or if that happens?
I hope I would state this right, with emergency personnel being an EMT service, which would be in the closest town, which would be about 6 miles away.
Do you know if they have been trained in treating liquid carbon exposure?
I have no idea.
Have you done any research on what this hazardous pipeline would do when it ruptures?
I have read some about it. I haven't dug deeply, but yes, I read about the suffocation possibilities.
And
I'm not honestly really sure what to believe and what not to believe when I read all this stuff, to be really honest with you.
well, there was a pipeline rupture in Mississippi. There are several videos that show it. They have no idea how far the plume will go. It depends all on the temperature, the wind. If the conditions were just right, that plume would very easily go towards your son and family. And once that hits them, it takes all the oxygen out of the air. No vehicles will run. So if you can't run out of the plume, you're not going to drive out. So those are the dangers. I mean, as a landowner, I understand what you're saying about the crop reduction and that the land will never be put back the way it was. But the safety is also the concern for everyone around the pipeline. And just, if you would go and watch that video, it shows a lot. Thank you.
Okay.
Objection.
Thank you.
State your objection.
assumes facts, not in evidence. Also a form of the question. It wasn't a question, it was just testimony.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Brent. Ms. Steck, were you done anyway and moving on? That's it. Okay. You mind flipping your... You're all right. You're all right. Okay. Are there any further questions from Board Member Burns? Oh, I'm so sorry, Ms. Ryan.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. I want to follow up with some questions about the easement terms. As far as, when you've been looking at your easements and contracts, what is your understanding of what types of compensation you would receive for crop loss?
As in dollar amounts?
Dollar amounts, but also just how long, how many years would you be compensated for?
I understand it was 3 years. Small amount each year.
Do you know if there would be any compensation if you continued to experience losses past 3 years?
No, I do not.
So you don't know if that was addressed in the easement agreement?
No, I do not.
As far as you recall, did the easement agreement address issues of what happens if the pipeline is abandoned?
No, not to my knowledge.
Do you know where you would look to find information about what happens when a pipeline is abandoned?
No.
Are you comfortable reading the Iowa Code and understanding what statutes say about pipeline abandonment?
Comfortable reading it. I don't know if I'm uncomfortable understanding it. That's two different things.
Okay.
But I would, yes.
In general, do you have any understanding of what would happen in the case that Summit abandoned the pipeline?
No.
All right. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Unless I missed someone, I don't believe we have any further questions from the parties. I believe, Mr. Pattee, you have a statement you'd like to read?
Yeah, would that be appropriate at this time?
Sure. Go for it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for allowing time for testimony. It saddens me to think that it comes down to this, to make an appeal to a private company, to the Iowa Utilities Board, to our governor, state senators and representatives, and county representatives, to beg someone, anyone, to help stop a private company that is trying to capture available lucrative tax credits to line their pockets from ripping up our family farm ground and planting a permanent private pipeline carrying who knows what to our fertile soil just so they, whoever that is, can make a profit. It saddens me that my hard-working family ancestors that loved this precious soil that God enabled them to make a living from cannot assist in preventing us in this massive corporate intimidation process called eminent domain, even when the landowners refuse to sign the big corporate contracts. It saddens me to think that our elected officials, some even paid via our tax dollars taken from this very family farm dirt, are standing by and appear to be letting this materialize right before our eyes. It saddens me to know that IUB, our county, state, and federal officials again will let a private company invoke eminent domain by simply taking family farm ground from tax-paying landowners without consent, as these officials twist this unjust process under the guise of what they call progress. All, mind you, without the landowner's consent. Eminent domain, the government's ability to condemn property, is so ominous that the mere threat of eminent domain influences all negotiations. Truly voluntary negotiation is impossible when one party has the power to get what it wants no matter what. If the government can take any profit it wants, owners have no real power in the negotiation. So when officials say they will use eminent domain only as a last resort, it simply means they will use force to take people's property against their will if they do not agree on the contract price. Again, the Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines eminent domain as, quote, the right of the government to take private property for public use by virtue of superior dominion of the sovereign power over all lands within its jurisdiction, end of quote. Apparently that's not true anymore. Do we, for a fact, and are there any guarantees in writing as to what the future substances or materials will be pumped through this pipeline? Is there a closing date for this pipeline? Will the landowners have any say in the future ownership of this soon-to-be antiquated, out-of-date pipeline? How soon will newer technology advances constitute shutting this thing down? And then what? Will the landowners really know the future of their family farms? And lastly, sadly, not 1 acre of any landowner family farm will ever be restored back to its original productive state. No matter what the experts tell you, the pipeline crew simply cannot put it back the way Mother Nature first put it together. No, not 2 years, not 5 years. Sadly, never. You can throw all the money you want at it, but some natural habitats will be disturbed. The soil health will forever be disturbed. Conservation disturbed. The looming possibility of future dangerous ruptures with yet more construction to fix these leaks. When does it stop? Our once fully sustainable, healthy, productive natural resources will never be returned back to its original, fertile, unmolested, God-given state. Iowa Utilities Board, please show us that you care and respect for the Iowa landowners. Iowa Utilities Board, please show us that you value Iowa landowners more than you value pipeline investors. Respectfully, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pattee. Thank you, Mr. Pattee. You are excused. We appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
All right. The board will now call the next witness, Jeff Rankmeyer, representing Avangrid Renewables, LLC. Yeah, that's fine.